So she kept that same femininity, that same, I guess, energy in the house, no matter what.
And I
And I
see,
just wanted to be like her in a lot of ways.
and I'm telling you, with it being like that, men in their nature is drawn to that. That's why a lot of people get pissed off a lot of times when we sit there and say it's not necessarily the black women that we're saying we don't that's having a hard time, or they're saying there's no good men out there. What we're talking about is the type of energy that's being brought out when they I'm not he ain't gonna be, it's like, oh no, no,
But
absolutely 100% not. No, I was telling them how if you operate how you're supposed to operate as a man and you operate how you're supposed to operate as a woman, I said it's like a magnet. Both of those ends will go like this. But if both of them are trying to bring the same type of energy, you can do whatever you want to try to make that magnet go together. One is going to push the other one away. And so
Hmm.
literally there were some people that did not agree with that. And I told them, I said, when you guys see this happen, I said, it's going to fall back to it being a nature thing. That no matter, I know a lot of women can say this, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I don't want he got to be 6'6". I said, but if the right man came across them, they wouldn't be able to help but let the nature take over, because there's nothing you can do about your nature. So a lot of them argue like, Ty, no, 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 it ain't. The next day, I was trying to get on this panel so bad because you got on there and you start speaking about how your mom said, always be sweet, always talk, stay this way. And I swear, within like 5 minutes of you talking, the whole panel, them all just, whew, all of them, the guys, the women on there too, everybody just kind of seen that. Then they went from that to, I like to just hear you talk. You have a very pleasant, it just changed the whole game up. So I sat there, I was like, put me in this panel now because I'm about to bust all of them out. Y'all just got this. And you got in there and did exactly what I was talking about. And that's why I was telling them, I said, this is the reason why she's married. This is the reason why she's in the predicament that she's in right now. This is the reason why I'm pretty sure the type of person that you are, I can just tell by how you talk. Your husband is probably the type of guy that's like, this is my babe. I'm going to do everything to take care of her, all because of how you present yourself. And the reason why I
Hmm.
say this is because that's what I tell people. They've heard me and my wife podcast before. The same exact thing they say about my wife. She's so sweet, so soft spoken, so timid sounding, so this, so that. I'm like, yeah. So what man wouldn't want to take that right there in and say, I'm going to do whatever it is I need to do to make sure that right there is going to be taken care of. And
I
what
believe the
that
woman
does,
I was referring to was my great grandmother because she's very
okay,
similar to me in that way. And she grew up in Cincinnati, I grew up in Toledo, so about 200 miles apart. But every time I saw her, I just was in awe of her. She could like float in the room and you wouldn't hear her, but you would always see her and feel her presence. And obviously, my great grandmother passed away when I was 16, but I always have these wonderful thoughts of her and the way she would cook and clean the house, even into I believe her late 80s. She was still walking and talking, running around the house, cleaning, being a homemaker, even though her husband had passed away many years prior. So she kept that same femininity, that same, I guess, energy in the house, no matter what.
and I
And I
see.
just wanted to be like her in a lot of ways.
And I'm telling you, with it being like that, men in their nature is drawn to that. That's why a lot of people get pissed off a lot of times when we sit there and say it's not necessarily the black women that we're saying we don't that's having a hard time, or they're saying there's no good men out there. What we're talking about is the type of energy that's being brought out when they I'm not he ain't gonna be, it's like, oh no, no,
but
absolutely 100% not. No.
Yeah, and I have some notes. I wanted to answer Shan's question about what does a woman do when she isn't already married? Is that correct?
The question was, if you when women go into a situation, and let's just say they decide not to go get an education, or they decide, like you kind of like in the scenario in which your parents put you in. It's like, oh, you either have to go to army or you have to go to get an education. Or maybe not an option at all. You just got to get out of the house.
Hmm.
What do you do with the women who choose not to do anything? They just go out in um just leave the house, because there are a group of women who do that as well. I met a couple here.
Okay,
So
just choose
what
to leave the
happens if they
house.
don't have a man to
Hmm.
cover
Um,
them. Mhm.
Correct. So I was, I guess the word is fortunate enough to have my father's covering even when I first went off to college, because I knew if Worst case scenario, college wasn't working out, everything was going, down the drain. I could at least call my father. And if I couldn't call my father, I could call my older brother or my twin brother. So in this scenario, it's an element of fear. And I don't want women to operate on fear, because fear will hold you back, and it could hold you back for years. So my grandmother was a school teacher of over 30 years, and she's now retired. And her favorite saying, along with my mother's, was education is the key to success. So when they said that, I always assumed school. But as I got older, finally into my 20s, they said, well, education is the key to success, but that does not always mean school. You need to always have a skill you can lean back on if everything else fails. Now, I've had times where my ankle was completely shattered. I was really sick. Obviously, I got sick along with everyone else. I still had skills. Most of them I learned on YouTube, or again, things I remember from my great grandmother, recipes. So I was able to use the skills I had in between when I wasn't able to work. So one of them was graphic design. Now, I did go to school for graphic design, but I learned more on YouTube than I ever did in school. So I actually did full courses on YouTube, 2, 3 hours, how to work with Canva, how to get Photoshop for free, all those things. So I was able to hone in on skills I learned online. And then also my grandmother taught me how to sew. So I had a sewing machine. So if anyone needed something altered or fixed, I was able to use that skill to make money. And then obviously for free for like my brother and my husband, but I was able to have that skill. As far as cooking, at one point before I moved to the West Coast, a kitchen actually wanted my recipes for their kitchen. So I was making a little mock cookbook, and I sat down with one of the cooks and said, this food is really good here, but I know ways to improve it. So he almost hired me on as a sous chef for his kitchen, but I declined that because we were already getting ready to move on the West Coast. So you need to hone in on a skill you're actually passionate about, learn it on YouTube, get connected with other people. And another thing is, you don't necessarily need to even have a skill to make money. So you can pressure wash, you can clean houses. I had a full cleaning business again before we moved here, just off the recommendation from my tax person. So my tax person said, well, are you starting a cleaning business? He told me which bank to go to, how to start it, and actually started cleaning his house. He left a review on my website, and that's why I got all 10 clients.
Good job. I like that. So, I have Kyle dial. So there's a small percentage of women who are educated. I think that there's a myth that says most Black women are educated. That is not true at all. Matter of fact, we are not the majority. We are the minority. And so I often wonder why people are always getting on the educated woman when there's so many women who are just not educated that you can choose from. And so
I would say
always
most
wonder,
Black women have a skill. Like, you can do hair, you can do nails, and you don't even have to go to school for that.
that's what I'm saying. So
Most women have an education in something they can use to make money when times are hard. Even natural hair, you can learn how to do natural curly hair, because I used to be in the flag and rifle line. If you guys know what that is, it's when the band's playing the songs and you're doing the rifles. I messed up both of my hands at one point. So I had to go to a beautician for months for her to do my hair, even when it was natural like this. So if you have a skill that you can do, you can always make money on the back end. So most Black women are very savvy.
Okay, so that's not. Let me complete the thought. So what I'm saying is, most Black women are not college, university educated. They're not. The numbers don't suggest that. So I've always questioned, why is the focus on the women who are educated? Why not, if there's a group of women who have skills, maybe they do hair or maybe they do other things, why is it always bashing the woman who's educated when we're not even the majority? Just choose from the majority.
Shan, it's not about bashing educated women. If Brienne LaFay came up here and said she had 10 PhDs, 10 doctorates, the energy that she brings,
she's not for you. That's what I'm saying. Don't focus on her. She's not the majority. She's a minority right here. So why do we keep talking about, it's kind of like we talk about high value men. They're not the majority. So why are we focusing on a majority group of people when you have, if there's 60%, 70% of women who are not educated, why are we focusing on the 30%? Why are we not focusing on the 60%?
In
She could
regards
have
to
zero.
marriage,
Between like being college educated and just like being overall like educated, like you can not have a college degree. Like when you look at a lot of CEOs, a lot of them don't have college degrees, but they hire on people that have college degrees. So you don't have to have a college degree, to Brianne's point, to have or build a skill set. So I think when men are talking about educated women, I would believe that they're referencing to women that are well versed, that can carry themselves in a certain kind of way in spaces that they share together, where, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody, man or woman, wants someone aside them that's just like, what are your primary colors?
I think it's the
Can I keep
characteristics
it
that
real
come
with y'all?
around educated women that go to college. So the characteristics are, being dominant, unable to listen, and then using that as almost like a tool. Like, okay, I have this, therefore I qualify for a certain kind of man. And a dominant, non-feminine um, demeanor is not what most men are looking for. So if you can be college educated and still be feminine, but it's kind of a hard ask because depending on what degree you go into, you're going to have to tap in more into your masculine. Again, I was in a paralegal program last year after I got released from my job, and it was stressful. I was in a class with a lot of men, and I never ended up finishing those courses. Now, I could this year after the baby, but it's not something my family's prioritizing right now. But I remember I was, very upset all the time. I was getting very close to being masculine. And my husband at one point said, if we don't need this, just drop the classes for a few semesters and see how you feel. That's what I ended up doing. So I ended up dropping my classes and just
Wow.
focusing on her family. And that's when I got pregnant. And I wasn't stressed
Okay,
anymore.
So
hold
I would
Yeah,
say that
listen.
I agree to an extent, Brian, that like, certain spaces will lead a woman to become more masculine. But I
Mhm.
have to say, just to kind of like put it out there for the other women, that you can definitely pursue an education and still be in your feminine essence. Like when we
Sure.
look at, it's definitely possible. Um, Being intentional, I don't think pursuing wanting to be educated is a masculine trait. At
No,
the end of
it
the day,
depends.
I think you were really blessed to be raised in a household where your parents, you had that kind of modeled for you, what it looked like for a feminine woman to be in the household, and to have a masculine man in the household, and what that interpersonal relationship really looked like. Because at the end of the day, men aren't raised or born into, knowing what it is to be masculine, just like women are. It's not innate for us to know what that looks or feels like. It's
Um,
something.
I just have a small pushback. My mom, she has about maybe 6 degrees in various fields. So I wasn't raised necessarily by a woman that was as feminine as you're saying. I look more to my great grandmother and my great grandfather for how they raised their families. Again, my mom grew up, wanting to be in school so badly because my grandmother, when she was going into the schools, she was one of the first integrated schools in the nation in Tennessee. So she had hoses sprayed on her. She was, spat on, things thrown at her as she was walking into her integrated school. So she really put that idea on my mother, who again never claimed to be a feminist, but had a lot of feminist ideologies to the point where when I was 18, it's like you have to go to school. There's no other option. And I always believed that growing up that college would save me. And that's why the only pushback I have is I was raised with two parents. My mom has very feminine, beautiful ways, but you couldn't tell her anything about a college degree. Like if once I got my college degree in her hand, it's like she had a sigh of relief. And I was glad to give that to her, but that's not something I actually wanted for myself. I just wanted to go and work and eventually, have a family. But if I would have followed what my mother said to the T, I don't think I would have been married today.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think that
So
let me make this point because I think that she just proved kind of like your point.
yeah, that's what I was going to
Because
say.
it's you just said two things that work for your husband, but obviously your mom's personality worked for her husband. Because she's been married for 40 something years and she has 6 degrees. So she
And
was
to
able to
have that
stay
modeled for
feminine.
you. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it helped. And so I guess the point that I was getting to was that in many spaces, you don't have that in the household. And it's something that has to you're taught and you're learned and you see it modeled for you. And so as you get older, it's easier for you to kind of transition in those spaces, like for yourself. Whereas in other spaces, you don't have that modeled. And so it's something that actually has to be learned, and you have to be intentional about learning it. If not, you're going to kind of find yourself in these, polar relationships where neither one of you are really in, occupying the polarity that really works best for you.